It was gigantic, and you know, everything's so old there.
All right, we are live and we're just talking libraries and books. And hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. And welcome to the Canadian Women's Foundation live chat with our friend Colin Mochrie. He is in a library of sorts that is endless, as you can see. So awesome. Thank you for joining us. So the
Thanks for
Canadian
having me.
Women's Foundation, as you may know, we're here virtually getting up close and personal with entertaining and fascinating people in Canada like Colin. My name is Andrea and I work with the Canadian Women's Foundation. I'll tell you a little bit about the Canadian Women's Foundation right now. We're Canada's public foundation for women and girls, and we were founded in 1991. We aim to build a gender equal Canada and move women and girls out of poverty, out of violence, and into confidence and leadership. We're all dealing with the impacts of this pandemic, as we all know. And within this reality of COVID-19 lies what many refer to as long-standing shadow pandemics, things like gender-based violence, things like systemic racism, and worsening inequalities on just so many different levels. As the national conversation focuses on recovery, we know we can't go back to normal. We need to really reset normal and build a gender equal Canada and focus on justice and use this opportunity to achieve a better future that will absolutely help everyone. So if you want to be a part of this effort, I'd like to ask you to please give to the Canadian Women's Foundation's Tireless Together Emergency Fund. All you have to do is click on the donate button below or visit canadianwomen.org. That's canadianwomen.org. You'll help ensure that diverse women and girls get the support they need to move out of poverty and out of violence and into confidence and leadership now in the pandemic and in the aftermath. Of course, every dollar helps and counts, and we're so thankful for how people have been rallying together right now. It's been a true inspiration in a very challenging time. So without further ado, I just want to turn us to the talented, hilarious Colin Mochrie. You may have heard of him from a few shows, a few little things here and there. He sharpened his comedic wit with Vancouver's Theatre Sports League and Second City in Toronto before he joined the British comedy improv show, Whose Line Is It Anyway? And then he later starred in the American version of that show. Colin has appeared on countless TV series, films, stage productions, and he's a writer. He's been recognized with many different awards, including the Canadian Comedy Award and Writers Guild of Canada Award. Thank you for taking the time to chat with us, Colin. Welcome.
Thank you. I feel pressure to be entertaining and fascinating.
Well, you are, so just be yourself. I think that's what we're here for. We love it. So I just want to flag for everyone that if we get cut off in this conversation, or if anything weird happens, things get weird on the internet, don't worry. You just hang tight and we'll be right back on, okay? So we're here, we're in this together. We're gonna move through this epidemic internets together. So let's just launch right into the questions, Colin.
All right.
First one.
All right.
How are you? What are you doing? Where are you? Is this the longest you've been in any one place?
It is. Just before, like the day before they closed the borders, I was in Utah. I was filming a movie and I was doing 2 different live tours. So leading up to that was insanely busy. Then I went from that to being in the vulnerable group of a pandemic. So there was a different sort of mindset, but it was actually nice just to spend time with Deb and Kinley and sort of, because I think I was getting close to the burnout stage. So it was nice to, I mean, it was a horrible reason why I did, but it was nice that I got a chance to spend time with the family.
That's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that there's a light in that situation. So we heard a podcast that said that you're apparently running a restaurant in the evenings. You're cooking for your gluten-free wife and pescatarian daughter. I had to learn what pescatarian is.
Yeah.
So what dish are you known for? And have you joined the pandemic baking cult?
I haven't and only because I'm 62. So when I eat baked goods, they stay with me for a long, long time. Oh my goodness, yes. And during this time, maybe the worst time. I've actually used this time to try different recipes just because I have had to make two different meals every night, 3 times a day. I mean, my big meal, the one I think I'm known for, is my Christmas dinner because it just goes on
Cool.
for a while. Um, but I'm working with different pastas and different vegetarian options, which is always good to be healthy,
Yep.
but it takes a lot of time.
I'm impressed that you're doing multiple meals a day.
I like to multitask, and I love puzzles. So for me, this is like a little puzzle, trying to figure out, okay, there's 3 different sort of loves in the food area. I'm fine with everything. So
Mhm.
really, it's those 2 that are important. Um, so we find the base. It'll be some sort of vegetable thing, and then Deb is chicken because she doesn't eat red meat. She's allergic to seafood. I can throw a fish on for Kinley, so I could have a fish with her, or I may go chicken. I may actually just throw in a steak. It's just that devil may care.
I love it. I'm really glad to hear that your base, you're thinking like in terms of food. So you're like base, and then what's the spritz that I'm going to put on it, and what's the salt and the acid. When everything has devolved to chips, this really gives me life. So thank you for that, Colin. Appreciate
Anytime,
it. Mhm.
anytime.
Inspirational. So before the world shut down, you were touring, scared scriptless. I had to say that very,
You got
very
to be very
carefully.
careful. Yes.
It's an audience participation improv show with Whose Line alum Brad Sherwood. Is that the main project you were working on? And what have you been doing on the in between time that we've had now?
It was that was the main. Well, was it the main? I don't know. Everything was actually evenly split up. So I was doing that with Brad. I was also doing a show with a hypnotist, Assad Meki, where he hypnotizes audience members, and then I improvise with them. And then this movie. So it was just every week I was in a different place, not really knowing where I was going. And then once this happened, I've been doing a lot of Zoom improv shows, which is odd. I mean, this is nice because this is a conversation. But when you're doing a show and there's no feedback whatsoever, um, it's very disconcerting. I mean, you have to just believe that you're being funny and hope that it's true.
Tell me, when you do those Zoom improv shows, do you, or any kind of Zoom anything, do you get feedback afterwards at least to know if you like evaluate if you did good?
There is sort of a live chat section.
Hmm.
I turn off because I don't want to actually read what people are saying as I'm performing. But afterwards, it seems positive. And people are trying to figure out different ways of using the technology to make it a little more organic and maybe a little more um, actor friendly. So we're trying different things. Brad and I are working on something where we'd actually have the audience with us on a Zoom. So maybe,
Nice.
of course, if they don't laugh, it'll just be horrible, but we'll see what happens.
That's really great. I'm glad that you're able to do comedy even in this time. And I'd like to switch to some questions about comedy,
All right.
that little subject. So you've been doing improv for a while, and
Thank you for not
I
putting it in years. I really
yeah,
appreciate it.
for 5 years
Sure.
this year. You're a young upstart. So I'd love to get your sense of how do you think comedy has evolved in your time in the industry, for better or for
Um,
worse?
okay. Well, okay. So when I started comedy, my comedy was mostly in theater, doing comedic parts. That was sort of my strength. Then when I got into improv, that was it was a new art. So nobody really knew what it was. We had to force audiences to come see our show, and they would say, "Well, what is it?" And we go, "Well, we don't have it yet. You have to shout things at us, and then we'll make a show together." And then that became popular. So to see just from the improv side of it, go from that to people are I would say more informed about improv than ever have been before in history, and people are doing different long forms. I've done one act plays. I recently did a Dungeons and Dragons improv with Rapid Fire Theater in Edmonton. Rebecca Northern, a great improviser, has been doing online blind dates where she'll have a date with someone online. So I love the way that we didn't just stick with the short form games. People have found ways of pushing it and doing everything from, I've done an improvised ballet with members of the Atlanta Ballet Corps, and also with the opera company. So I love that nobody's just satisfied with the way things are. They're always trying to find new ways of doing improv and bringing different art forms into it, which is great. And I'm trying to think what, the only thing that's really changed, I think, has been what you're allowed to say. Although it also, now it seems that we're pulling back a little bit. But when I was growing up, it was still, you had to be clean. And then there was that sort of freedom where you could say anything. I'm not a big fan of swearing. I can find it really funny, but I sometimes I feel, especially in improv, I feel it's a cheat. It's an easy way to get a laugh rather than, that's like people. When I look back of the people like Jack Benny and Danny Kaye and Bob Hope, they all had to work clean because of the time, and they were all funny. So I feel we can still do that. That said, I have been known to say, to swear on stage, usually when I'm panicking and things are going poorly.
It's a good plan B, I guess.
Yeah. And I love there's more social commentary in comedy now with people like David Chappelle and Hannah Gatsby, which is great. I love comedy where you're laughing and then you go, wait a minute. Yeah. It makes you think. And you actually, I love when you learn something from a stand-up show or even an improv show, a sketch show. So it's never a stationary thing. It's always evolving.
I guess it's improving on improv. I don't know. Just throwing that out there. What's so great, I feel, is all the diverse voices that are coming out. And I think in some ways, it seems like it's never been a better time to be a comedian, particularly in Canada. And I feel like a lot of diverse voices coming up, Canada in particular. And tell me, pandemic excluded, what's it like as a career comedian in Canada? And do you feel you have to go somewhere else to make it happen anymore?
Oh, good question. It's odd for me because I had to go somewhere else to make it here. Once I'd made it elsewhere, then I started getting offers to do stuff in Canada. But there was, I started with the British Cruise Line, which was, it would be like 4 weeks in the summer. So we would just work on the weekends. It was like a little vacation. We'd go over there. I'd have the week with Deb to do anything in London. And then I'd work for, a couple of hours. And then I would come back to absolutely nothing. I was doing the struggling actor thing of, auditioning for commercials and doing corporates with Second City. Second City, thank God, uses alumni a lot. So that was some steady income. But it wasn't until Whose Line moved to America that I started to get work in Canada. And that's always, I don't know if it's better now. I think it may be with the sort of the worldwide success of things like Schitt's Creek and Kim's Convenience, stand-ups like, Ron James and so many people. I think it may be easier to get out there. Also with the internet, you can get your stuff on YouTube or whatever and sort of reach a bigger international audience that way. But I really wish and not only us, I feel everywhere comedy isn't appreciated as much as it should be. During this time, people turn to comedy. I know I watched a lot of stand-up specials and old sitcoms that I loved. because times like this, you feel you need a laugh and you're not really getting a lot of stimulus for laughter outside of the home. So, and yet I feel once this is over, it'll go back to the thing with, I think because everybody has a funny relative, they think it's really simple. Uncle Frank in the kitchen just kills. And it's like, yeah, but put him in front of an audience who have paid money to see something and make them laugh. It's different.
Right. I think Uncle Frank would freeze in that context.
I hope so. Frank has always been a problem.
Yeah, for real. He's not as funny as you think he is.
No.
Folks, we are with myself, Andrea, Canadian Women's Foundation, and Colin Mochrie, the hilarious, the wonderful, the multi-talented Colin Mochrie. And we're just chatting, Colin in his beautiful library estate and me in my apartment. So I think one of the things that we've been hearing from women comedians for a while now is that they were told early on in their careers in particular that women are not funny. Sometimes they're told that even now, and that's ridiculous because I think we're finally learning better in a broader way. We know that women and trans and non-binary folks are hilarious. So do you see a difference in the comedy that they make, or do you find that just comedy is comedy?
Yeah, I find comedy is comedy. The great comedians are the one who can reach everybody because what they're doing is universal. They're talking about something that touches all of us. I've been very fortunate in that I have been surrounded by strong women all my life, and especially in comedy. When I started in theater sports, we had amazing, strong women who were very funny, and that happened through Second City. It didn't happen as much in Whose Line because of probably things I shouldn't mention, but our producer was a bit of a misogynist. And I know Ryan and I would be constantly fighting for bringing more women on just because, me playing a woman does not bring, I don't think, the female experience. So of course there is, like everybody, we all have a different point of view, and that's what makes a comedian unique, what their point of view is. Also, being a woman, women comedians deal with things that I've never dealt with and will never deal with. So it's also refreshing to hear that and remind yourself, like, oh yes, I could be a better ally, because I've fallen into the horrible things that women and everyone has faced over the years. But hopefully you learn and become a better person. And my wife is the funniest person I know, and she constantly breaks me up. Going far back is like Lucille Ball or Imogene Coca, who was on the Sid Caesar show. Julia Louis-Dreyfus, amazing, incredibly funny. And they're all, I think part of the thing that makes you love them is they're also human too. You see, as you're laughing at them, you see the person. And I think that's what makes a great comedian, male or female.
I think it's so great to hear. It's important for us to stand up for equality and equity, and it's important for us to do it in our spheres of influence. So thank you for sharing that example of what you did on the show that you were involved in. Speaking of funny people, you have a very funny family. You've collaborated with Deborah, your wife, who is the funniest person that you know. And what about your daughter, Kinley? Any collabs that we should look forward to? And are there any family projects in the work?
Actually, we're doing something tonight on We're Funny That Way on CBC Gem. Maggie Casella puts on this wonderful show every year, and she asked if we would be part of it. And since we're all trapped at home anyway, we thought, hey, why don't we do something? And maybe we can be the new Barrymores. We'll see.
I love it.
So we had a great time, and I think it turned out really well. So I'm trying to think if we ever worked before. No, we've never done anything as a family before. We just make each other laugh at home quite a bit. But no, this is our first professional Von Trapp family gig.
Nice. Where is it again? CBC Gem, you said?
I'm sorry?
CBC Gem. That's how
CBT
people
Gem.
connect.
I think it's on
Okay,
tonight at 8 o'clock.
wonderful. Okay, that's cool. So you're still doing things. The pandemic doesn't have to particularly limit your capacity, especially with all these tools that we have available to us. So that's really awesome. I'm going to move to some questions about improv in particular. What improv sketch cracked you up so much that you could hardly finish it?
I'm usually pretty good at not breaking up. The closest I came, I think, was with the Richard Simmons when he joined us on Who's Line, only because he was just so committed and so energetic. And that is a scene that whenever people talk about Who's Line, they always bring it up to me, and they keep sending it to me like it's like, yeah, I know it. So I don't
Oh,
want to.
bears.
Yeah. So that was there was one in the recent season we did. It's a thing called Secret where there's a case or something. Ryan and I don't know what's in it. One of us opens it, and then from that. So the secret was I opened it up, and they had superimposed my head on a kind of half-naked supermodel body. That quite took me aback because I was not ready for it, and it just made me laugh for like a good 30 seconds. Which I'd never done before. I felt actually ashamed because I've always prided myself on not breaking up. But yeah, that did it for me. Although I looked damn good.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. I
Yeah.
mean, right here in your library of treasures, you look great. Question: When you cracked up like that, and that was maybe the only time, but did they keep the cameras rolling? Did they air that?
Oh yeah, there's nothing ever taken away from Who's Line taping. There's hundreds of shots of me breaking up Ryan, who is when you break up the guys on the show, it's such a great feeling because they're all so jaded. So they've seen everything, they've done everything, but when you actually get them to where they're crying, it feels like you've just made some scientific discovery or something. It's you feel super important and for no reason at all, except you've made some goof laugh. So I think the beauty of one of the reasons Whose Line succeeded so well was they kept all that stuff in. They kept some of the mistakes in because it shows that we're actually improvising. And I think it sort of showcased what I love about the show is everyone on the show has their own fan club. And on any particular show, any one of us could have been the star. It was really very equal that way. Everybody had their talents that they added, and as a group, I feel we were very strong. So, and people, when people come up to me, it's not like they say everyone feels they know us when they come up to us because we didn't play a character, although we kind of did because Deb calls the guy on Whose Line the other because it's so unlike me. I tend to be more quiet and reserved, and that guy is a laugh whore.
When you have to go on air and you're your other self, do you feel that it's another part of you that's coming out, or is it a persona that you're putting on that's entirely different?
It's another part that comes out. Um, when I'm on stage, either a live performance or doing Whose Line, that is the most relaxed I am in my life. I think because I know I'm with people I trust, I know what I'm doing, and that's the only place where that happens, is on that stage. So I'm very relaxed, and then it's sort of like a Jekyll and Hyde thing. The Hyde character comes out and does what he does, and then I can go back to being meek, mild-mannered Colin Mochrie.
Folks, you're with Colin Mochrie, meek and mild-mannered, so to speak. This is what he says he is. And I'm Andrea, and I'm with Canadian Women's Foundation, and we're just talking about comedy. We're talking about being funny and finding strength in the pandemic. So the question that I have is, what's the most terrifying improv moment you've ever experienced?
Most which improv?
The most terrifying improv moment you've ever experienced.
All right, here's um, I've been doing this show with Assad Meki, hypnotist. He had been taking workshops at Second City, realized that what the instructors were telling him to do is sort of what he does to the people he's hypnotizing. He gets them out of their head, gets them to accept ideas. So he contacted my agent, said, I have this idea for a show. We sat down, we talked about it. I said yes without really thinking. And once we were getting closer to doing the show, I got terrified because of so many things. I mean, the first time we did the show was the first time we did the show because we couldn't rehearse it. It was, we just did it. And I remember asking Assad, hey, if I ask them to do this, will they do that? And he would say, it depends on the subject. They might, or they might just stare at you. And I realized, oh, I should have asked this before I said yes. And then went out and doing this show with people who I have just met, who are under hypnosis. And it was terrifying, but it became something I loved because I realized, first of all, it made me go back to the basics of improv, of listening to them, of saying yes to whatever they were offering me. And I realized also they were pure improvisers. They were accepting everything I gave them. They would just say the first thing that would come to mind. So we would have these amazing scenes. It was like working with professional improvisers, except their eyes were deader. Aside from that, almost the same.
I am just impressed that people would put themselves out there like that. Wow.
I don't get it. Like Assad will say, can I have 20 volunteers? And it's like we've offered a vaccine. Everyone's just running up. We have to send people back. It's just, I don't get it at all.
I don't have that level of bravery. Like, kudos to them. That's awesome. And they pay for this experience. Wow.
That I always feel bad. Like, oh, you missed the entire show, but you were great.
That's right. So tell me about your improv skills. Do they come out in other areas of life, and do they help or hurt you in your other areas of life?
Actually, Deb and I, maybe about 10 years ago, decided, hey, why don't we use the rules of improv in our real life? Because it's basically things we should do in real life, but don't, which is basically you listen to people, you walk in with no preconceived ideas. You don't think, okay, I'm going to fight with this person because I know what you just walk in open, you accept ideas, and you try to make the other people you're with look good. So our very first test, once we said we would do this, was World Vision asked us to go to the Congo. And the Congo was not on one of our destinations. But we went, and it was one of the best experiences we ever had. We had just left Christmas in North America. We went to the Congo, went into the jungle where there was just abject poverty. And yet these people, I don't know, just sparkled. They just had this joy. We met so many lovely people, so many great memories. I have this memory of Deb leading all these kids by this lake in the hokey pokey, and them just falling over, laughing, having a great time. And then since then, we've been saying, I mean, there are things I will say no to. I'll never jump out of a plane or something. But if something's a little outside of my comfort zone, I may think, you know what, I don't feel totally comfortable, but I could learn something from this, or it may take me somewhere. And it's really worked well for us. And when her daughter came out as trans, I think that training also helped also, because our first thing was to accept and then deal with whatever after that.
Okay, so I had to write that down because I thought that was awesome. You said listen, you said accept ideas, maybe that are unfamiliar to you, and try your best to make others look good.
Yeah, that's why people always say, why is improv so hard? It's like, well, it really isn't. It's just not what we do.
Mhm. I love that. Those are kind of life lessons for us to take today. That's really awesome. So, speaking about some more improv questions, have you ever, on purpose or by accident, repeated the same sketch twice?
I am fairly sure I have. Ryan and I grew up together in Vancouver. So, including Whose Line, we've worked together for 40 years. There have been times in a scene with him where I go, I'm pretty sure we've made this up before. This sounds kind of, but I'm sure there are. We try to stay away from it, obviously. And when we're doing our live shows, Brad and I, most of our work goes into finding ways to get something from the audience that we've never had before, so we don't have to worry about that. But yeah, I'm pretty sure, because everything you use in improv is everything that you've experienced in your life. There's this theory that when your life flashes in front of your eyes, it's because you're in a dangerous situation and your mind is downloading every experience you've had to see if there's something that will get you out of this particular thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it's like when you're improvising. Everything you've ever experienced is sort of coming out. And I think if you get a very similar lead up, you could come up with something you've actually said before.
That begs another question for me. Do you find yourself getting nervous before improv shows that you do? That life flashing before your eyes thing makes me think, is it almost like a near death experience before you
Sure.
go on?
Oh, yeah. I mean, every night you have a 50-50 chance of it going well. I 5 minutes before the show, I'll be in the side area of the stage, in the wings, side area of the stage. It's like anyway, I was in the wings, and then I'm nervous, and then as the lights go down and I walk on stage, it's all gone, and I think then it's all becomes about survival.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're there, I'm there with Brad, we're getting stuff, we're dealing with the audience, we're dealing with whatever we have to do in the scene. And that's why after a show, it's very hard to remember what we did unless something went horribly wrong. Yeah, that's usually it. Those are the things you remember.
Okay. Let's move on to some questions about coping through laughter. They say laughter is great for mental health. I think this is a given now. So tell me, have you been able to find laughter in these times, and where have you found it?
I have. I mean, weirdly, of course, all these stories come to my mind that I just can't share because they're not part of my stories. But like going on Netflix, or I've been watching shows that I loved growing up, funny shows. So there's that it's sort of a comfort comedy. And then just through sometimes the absurdity of life. Our daughter has been living with us. She just had a major operation last week. So she's been with us, and some weirdly funny things have come through that, through taking care of. And I love when we laugh as a family, and it gets to that point where nobody can say anything because you're just trying to breathe. You're laughing so hard. So I'll always find amusement with my family. I've been trying. I've been finding new shows, which is nice. When I say new shows, there's shows that have been on for a while, but I just discovered them.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
There's a show called Catastrophe, which I just love, which has just been making me laugh. I think there's 7 seasons of it. We just started the 2nd season. And I mean, there's so much content out there. It's hard to keep up with everything. And it's really hard when somebody recommends something that they love that's funny, because everybody's sense of humor is so individual. So there have been times where people say, oh, you have to see this, it's the funniest. And I go, no, I don't get it at all. But I won't diss it because Yeah,
Right.
I don't find it funny, but obviously you do. So there's something there.
When you have to go back and tell that person, I didn't connect with it. What do you say? Just asking for a friend.
I always lie. Just lie. Yeah, it was great.
Uh-huh.
Um, you know, they put themselves out there by
Yes, yes,
that's
they did.
why I hate recommending something, especially if it's something I really love.
Mm.
Because I think, oh, what if they don't like it? And I love it so much, and I want them to share in that. So I tend to lie and say, yes, yeah, that was great.
I try my very best to find something nice to say or something good to say, but it does end up feeling like I'm lying because I'm overemphasizing that side and not
It's really,
emphasizing the
you have
other
to go
sides.
simple. It's like going to a show and seeing a friend of a show where it just sucks, and you go, "Hey, you were in that." It's like, no,
I saw you.
just
Bye.
good work, and then move on.
Well, in this pandemic version of life that you're living today, um, have you found any comedy inspiration? You mentioned that your family is making you crack up in unexpected ways. Other comedy inspirations around you that you think you might use?
Um, yeah, I'm doing something on um, Saturday with a group, Minneapolis improv troupe, and it's sort of a fundraiser for Black Lives Matter. And it's people that I have met, but I'm not overly familiar with. But what I love about them is they're incredibly passionate. And that's something I feel sometimes I don't have. I mean, I'm very passionate about my family. I don't think I'm that passionate about the work. I love the work. I really enjoy it. And maybe that's it. But it's not something that drives me. I'd rather be, I, I love being on stage. I love all that, but I also love being with my family and doing things with them. That's what I'm really passionate about. And um, but I love when they're talking. I just get so inspired, and I get angry, and I'm filled with grief. And I think, yeah, this is what I want to do more of. So I'm trying to get more involved with, and it's not just young people, which is great. It's no one as old as me, but still some older. It's nice to remember. Yeah, you know what? I have had it um, completely easy. I'm a straight white man. I'm going to be fine. There's so many people out there who are not fine, and it's for no reason. Because
Mm,
it's because of the way they look, it's because of their gender, their sexuality, things that really in 2020, it's shameful that that's still a thing.
yeah.
It's embarrassing. I feel if an alien landed here, it just move on. This is come back. I don't know when, but I thought we'd have it solved by now. But no, you have to find another civilization. So it's also, I think, good for me to remember these things and get involved with these things and do what I can. I mean, I'm not certainly going to solve everything, but I try to support as much as I can. When my daughter came out as trans, I posted it on Facebook and Twitter with her approval. And I got this email from um, a trans man in London who ran an improv company there and said, I want to congratulate you on your daughter. Thank you for being so supportive. Can I ask you to really keep an eye on all the transphobic stuff you do on Whose Line? And it was like,
Mm.
oh, yeah. And then all of a sudden, just all these memories of saying, oh, yeah, that was homophobic, that was misogynist, yep, yep, yep. And I said, can I share this? Do you mind if I share this letter on Facebook? And we've got all these improv companies from around the world just sort of weighing in and saying, yeah, yeah, we do that. And it's, and it was never malicious. It was truly through ignorance of just going, well, I'm just getting a laugh. This isn't going to hurt anybody. It's just the laugh. So it's been really good, things like that, keeping everyone aware of, yeah, it may be good for that 3-second laugh, but now you've just ruined some audience members' whole night.
I think your improv lessons of life, I think, come in here. Listen, accept ideas, make others look good. I love that in that context. And I think we've got some questions from the audience that I think are really relevant to this. Veronica puts up a statement and a question. As a trans woman, I've noticed that you've spoken up when someone has made a transphobic joke. So people are listening and noticing, and that's really awesome. Have you had pushback doing that?
From the people who were making the joke?
From anybody, from people that you were sharing this idea with, like, let's think about this comedy, let's think about the impact of perhaps what's going on.
The only negative stuff I ever got was from the people on the internet who do the negative stuff. And I would look at the messages I was getting, and there were some you would just go, okay, this is just a troll. They're just there to do. And then there were those who I thought, you know what? I can reach them. I can make maybe 3% of that I did. My thing was, there's some people you're just not going to change, but I want people to educate themselves and then make your mind up. A lot of times you're just talking straight from ignorance.
That's
But
right.
my daughter came out, my wife's family is quite conservative, very conservative. But to a person, they accepted her without just wholeheartedly, all of them. And I realized it's because they know the person. They knew her from a child. And so this was just a kind of a change she was going through. And yet, not really, it's the same person. And I realized if more people took the time to realize, yeah, you know what? We're all just trying to do our best.
I think that's why when you're speaking about these things, I think representation matters. I think hearing more perspectives matters. Making sure that you see the humanity in somebody else, it matters, and it changes your viewpoint perhaps, or at least it gets you thinking about things that you didn't think about and that you allowed yourself to be just kind of too hardcore about or too, narrow-minded about. So this is really wonderful to hear. And speaking about trolls and strange things on the internet, just want to remind people, don't click on any fake links that you see at the bottom there. Sometimes when we have these Facebook Lives, people put in a lot of strange things. Don't click on those things, okay, friends? Just stay safe on the Facebook, will you? My name is Andrea. I'm with Canadian Women's Foundation and with Colin Mochrie. We're just chatting. For those of you who just joined us, we're talking about comedy. We're talking about, all kinds of things. And also telling some tales from the comments. So we're going to get to that, but I have a lightning round of questions that I want to ask you.
All right.
All right. It's just to test you and to challenge you. You already answered this one, but please repeat it for us because it's so lovely. Who makes you laugh the hardest?
My wife, with my daughter a close second, but she's young, she'll learn.
Nice. Dream comedy collaboration.
I would love to work with Stephen Carell because I find him funny, but there's something so compelling about him, and he has a lot of heart, I believe.
Okay, 3 famous people in your pandemic isolation household.
Oh.
Famous people.
All right, so I won't include my family because just realized,
Not allowed.
I would say Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Kamala Harris, and they have to be living, right?
Nope.
Oh, really?
They don't have to be living.
Cary Grant. I've always been a big Cary Grant thing. Boy, that'd be a cool night, I think.
Okay, so your last 2 months at home, if that was made into a reality show, what would it be called?
Oh, Cooking with Stress.
Describe yourself using only a sound effect. I heard a droning bass sound. Is that what that was
That's me.
supposed to be?
That's constantly where I'm going. I'm a very calm person, so I always have that sort of, okay, see what happens.
Stable table. Gotcha. Okay. Describe your career only using a sound effect.
Oh, oh,
Okay. Best catchphrase
oh. Of all time?
of all time.
Jeez. It's hard. The only thing I can think of is dynamite. And I don't think that was one of the greatest catchphrases.
That's an impossible question. That was an unfair question, I
I'm going to
think.
go with stifle yourself.
Oh, stifle yourself.
'Cause
Okay.
I don't believe people do stifle themselves enough.
Uh-huh. Stifle yourself. Okay. If the Canadian Women's Foundation became an improv troupe, what would you call it?
Oh my God. How many ways can I get in trouble? Um, unimagined greatness.
Oh my goodness. That is not trouble. That is awesomeness. Thank you.
I'm very happy. I work well under stress.
Yes, you do. Some would say that you might have talents in improv.
I'll try.
Okay. All right, we're going to go to some great audience questions. I just want to thank people for tuning in, for putting your comments and your questions in here. Some of them are really awesome. We have one from Ian. What's the biggest difference between working on the US and UK Whose Line shows?
The biggest difference was censorship. I mean, we had the same cast, basically the same producers. In Britain, we could do anything. And when you have that freedom, you actually don't really take advantage of it. But then when we got to the States, usually a show has to send in a script, the censor looks at it. Because we didn't have a script, they were in the booth during our show. So there was one time where they stopped me in the middle of a scene because I kissed Greg Proops. And they said, can you please make up something else? And then Drew has a real button about censorship. So the next 10 minutes became unfilmable because he would introduce games using words that you can't really use on television. So our producer and the censor came up with this system where we would just do the show. Then afterwards, the producer would fight for something. And so it would go like that. One of the best, that's idiotic, but one of the best lines, it just sort of summed up the American Who's line for me, was the producer came up one night and go, Colin, we lost the pussy, but we got two penises. And I went, oh, I don't know what the right answer is, but well done.
Good.
So it was real. And what was weird was we never knew what the line was. There were sometimes they would bleep something that was totally innocent. And then there were other things that would let go that were not quite as innocent. So that was difficult. We didn't know, we knew the obvious ones, but we didn't know the subtleties because it seemed to change.
Okay, Ian, I hope that answers your question there. I have one from Christina. What's the best joke you've ever told? Or maybe the one that still cracks you up now?
Okay. All right, here's my joke that when I'm asked to tell a joke, it's a clean joke. Here it is. A young pastor working at a church was asked by the women's club there to give a short talk on sex. So he said, yes, I will do that, absolutely. He was a little embarrassed about it, but for the good of the congregation, he said he would do it. When he, the day he was going to give the speech, as he's leaving, his wife says, what are you doing? And he said, oh, I have to give a speech on yachting, about boating. And she went, oh. So he did it. It was a big success. Later, his wife is at the supermarket. people are coming up to going, I have to say, your husband's talk was quite amazing. It was spectacular. And finally, after about the fifth one, because she thought, this talk on boating is really caught fire. And finally, this woman comes and goes, I have to say, your husband's talk was amazing. And she said, I have to say, I'm quite surprised. He's only done it twice. The first time he got sick, the second time his hat blew off. Ta-da!
Pum. Love it. Okay, here's another question. Natalia, your favorite Who's Line host? Who were they?
Oh, geez, yeah. Okay, so that won't get me in trouble.
No, not at all.
Here's the thing. I love all three of them. They're all, I will love Clive forever because he was part of the beginning for me. And I mean, on camera, he's very acidic, very acerbic, but he is like one of the loveliest, sweetest guys. Drew Carey, without him, my career would never have taken off. He brought us all to the public. One of the most generous men ever. And that's how you want your millionaires. Every year he would take us on a trip somewhere, totally pay for it all. He was a major fan of the show and so supportive. Aisha, I thought when we first started, I thought, well, how is this going to work? How do we make fun of this beautiful, talented Black woman who's very accomplished? She's written books, she does stand-up, she sings. And then we found a way because she's a nerd, she's goofy, she loves to get in there. So all three of them have been totally different, and yet they've all had the same sort of loving, giving spirit.
Lovely. Yeah, phew. Whew. You answered that well. Your favorite game on Who's Line? What did you love to play?
You know, the games would go up and down. There were some games where you go, like Hoedown, hands down, hated across the board. No one liked it, hated it. You know, I've been doing like 35 years of Hoedowns. It's horrible. But the one I loved was Greatest Hits. First of all, we got to sit down. Then it was a chance for Ryan and I just to sort of riff and have fun. Then we would hand it over to these amazing singers like Wayne or Chip Eston or Brad, Jeff Davis. So it was one of the games where I got to have fun as a participant and also as an audience member. And that consistently has been my favorite game.
Your favorite prop?
I have to say, I truly can't answer that because they make their own props, and half the time it just looked like genitalia. So immediately your first thought was something that you can't use on television. So there was never one that came up where I went, oh yeah, all right. Props was a close second to Hoedown.
Oh my gosh. We're learning everything here, folks.
Yeah.
This is the inside scoop right here. Carolyn asks, what job would you have done if you didn't do stand-up comedy or TV?
Yeah, I often wonder what I would do because I have no skills at all. I have nothing. I don't really like people. So something that has to deal with the public wouldn't be good. I mean, I like cooking, but again, that would put me, I wanted to be a marine biologist when I was up till around grade 11 until I got my first laugh and was ruined. So maybe I'd go back to that, marine biology, something in that world.
Mary wants to know the new projects that you're working on during COVID in particular, and will we see you on TV soon? And also noting, enjoyed seeing you on Murdoch.
Oh yes, Murdoch. I have to say one of my proudest moments was getting on Murdoch because they had I think they were starting their 11th season. And I said, hey, congratulations on your new season. Am I the only Canadian actor who's never been on Murdoch? And like 2 days later, I got a call. I thought, I thought, I never thought that would work. So I was very unhappy. I've tried it with other directors, nothing. But that was a pleasure to work on. Yannick is lovely and the entire cast, wonderful. And I got to do like 3 episodes on it. Will you see me elsewhere? I don't know. Um, the industry is so kind of up in the air right now. I mean, most of my work is touring in theaters, and they have to figure out how is that going to work. If you're talking about selling a third of the house with everyone socially distanced, um, that will be an odd audience to play to with everyone in different pockets. Uh, then the television industry is totally going to have to be redone. No more will you be six of you getting makeup at the same time, or a craft table at lunch where everybody can just pick. And so I nobody hopes you'll see me somewhere more than I do. I just don't know when or where that will be, but I
Right.
will keep you informed.
All right. Barbara asks, were you on an improv team in school?
Here's the thing, Barbara. There was no improv when I was in school. There was no, it was not a thing. When I started improv in 1980, that was the first time that, I knew Robin Williams was improvising, and Jonathan Winters, but I didn't even know the word improvising. It was just, they were just making things up and trying to seem to make the others laugh. Yeah, so there was nothing like that. And one of the things I'm proud of with Whose Line is that, first of all, it was a show that families watched together, and then it really got improv happening in places like schools. Improv clubs, popped up in schools and colleges and cities everywhere. So I'm really glad that it sort of, got improv on the map.
It also got improv into every party it felt that I went to. And hoedowns, it's great to do hoedowns with people who have no comedy talent,
Is it?
myself included. It's a great, painful experience, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
It's
Yeah,
painful for everyone, amateur or
that's
professional.
right. Okay, there you go. Okay, I thought it was just us. That's good
No,
that's really insightful to tell us. Thank you.
you're welcome.
I have one more question for you. We're almost out of time, but I must ask this at the 1 minute left mark. Where do you see comedy heading? Teresa wants to know. What's the future of comedy?
Oh, you know what? I have no idea. And I think that's part of the beauty of it. Just something will pop up where you go, what is that? Like, nothing really led up to Monty Python. It was
Mm.
like, all of a sudden, it was like, what is this? And then, Seinfeld like turned the sitcom sort of on its ear. And then Hannah Gatsby kind of turned the stand-up special on its ear. So I wish I knew. I just think people are going to keep innovating. I think people are going to, it's always going to be interesting. It's not going to be dull. And yeah, I'm excited to see what happens, because I truly have no idea. No idea at all. What a horrible
Okay.
answer.
That's actually, I think that's the only fair answer, because things are really changing. And I think that it's really exciting. And we're so happy to get the chance to talk with you, because it's exciting to hear about all the things that you're doing and all the insider stuff that you shared with us. So thank you so much, Colin. Really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us in these weird times. And I'll just end by saying, folks, thank you for joining us. Thank you for asking your questions. Thank you for just being there. Our Zoom worked. Can you imagine? That's really great. The Canadian Women's Foundation, just to close us off, it builds gender equality, and we support programs all over Canada. These efforts, of course, are proving more important than ever. In the pandemic, we definitely don't want to go back to the way things were. We want them to get better for everyone. And we know that when women and girls are thriving and gender equality for everyone is the norm, everyone thrives and everyone benefits. This is without question. This is really important for us to recognize that we need to support. So why we're doing what we're doing, we're raising funds for women and girls and the grassroots programs that support them through the Tireless Together Emergency Fund. This makes sure that women and girls get what they need in this pandemic, and that services continue to support them into the future, that they're still there after the pandemic and in the recovery process. So if you want to get in on this effort, I really encourage you to click on the donate button below or visit canadianwomen.org. Every dollar counts and will make a difference in this challenging time. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Colin. Take care, be safe, and be well. Bye-bye.